My mother didn't raise her voice when she erased me. She just said, "You've always been nothing," and no one disagreed. For a second, I felt it, that old doubt. What if they're right? Then my hand touched the bag at my feet. 10 years of truth sitting inside it. And in that moment, everything changed. Because I wasn't there to defend myself. I was there to prove them wrong. Nothing. My mother said it like it had always been my name. Not loud, not angry, just certain. And that certainty was what cracked something in the room. The fluorescent lights hummed above us. A pen paused mid-scratch. Even the mediator at the hearing blinked just once, but it was enough. The word hung there, heavy, deliberate, impossible to take back. "She contributed nothing," my mother repeated, folding her hands like she had just stated a fact in a report. "Not to this family, not to my father. She left, and now she wants to take what she didn't earn." I felt every eye turn toward me. Here's the hook, the moment everyone expects the nothing to break. I didn't break. I sat still, calm, because I knew something they didn't. This wasn't the moment I would defend myself. This was the moment they would realize who I really was. The leather bag at my feet pressed against my ankle, solid, grounding. Inside it, years of silence translated into evidence. The mediator, Mr. Clark, cleared his throat. "Peyton," he said carefully, "would you like to respond to that statement?" I lifted my gaze slowly, meeting my mother's eyes. For a flicker of a second, I saw something there. Expectation. She was waiting for me to stumble, to speak too fast, to sound unsure, like I always had. "Not yet," I said. My voice didn't shake. My father shifted in his seat. "Then what are we doing here?" he muttered, irritation slipping through. I turned my head slightly toward him. "You'll see." Jasper exhaled sharply, leaning back with a quiet scoff. "This isn't a game, Peyton." No, it wasn't. That was the problem. I leaned forward, resting my hands on my knees. My pulse was steady, but something deeper, older, tightened in my chest. Years of being dismissed, of being unseen, of being reduced to nothing. And suddenly a memory cut through me, my grandfather's voice, soft but firm. "Let them underestimate you. It makes the truth louder when it arrives." I inhaled slowly. Then I reached down. The zipper broke the silence. A small sound, but in that room, it felt like the beginning of something irreversible. I looked up again, this time not at my mother, but at the mediator. "I think," I said quietly, "it's time we stop talking about assumptions and start looking at facts." And just like that, the room stopped belonging to them. There's a moment in every family when roles stop being assigned and start being enforced. Mine came early. "Why can't you be more like your brother Jasper?" My mother didn't look at me when she said it. She was watching him, laughing, easy, effortless, like the answer was already standing right there in the room. Here's the hook. I didn't fail their expectations. I simply refused to become them. Jasper was younger, but he filled every space I never tried to occupy. Sports trophies lined the hallway like a timeline of approval. My report cards, perfect, quiet, unnoticed, stayed folded in drawers. One night at dinner, my father tapped Jasper's shoulder. "That's my boy," he said, pride thick in his voice. Then he glanced at me. "And you're doing okay in school, right?" Okay. I swallowed the answer that wanted to come out. I'm fine, because explaining excellence to people who only recognize noise is a losing battle. But here's what they never saw. While Jasper was being celebrated, I was building something sharper. At 17, I stayed up nights studying financial systems no one had assigned me. Patterns, loopholes, behavior hidden in numbers. It wasn't passion, it was survival. At 18, I applied to universities without telling them. When the acceptance letter came, with honors, with funding, I held it in my hands for a full minute before opening the kitchen door. "I'm leaving." My mother blinked. "Leaving where?" "University." Silence. Then my father asked the only question that mattered to him. How much is this going to cost me? Nothing. He nodded once. Good. That was it. No pride, no hug, no, we're proud of you. Just permission to disappear. And I did.
Years passed in quiet victories. I graduated top of my class. Again, unseen, unspoken. When I told them I'd joined the IRS Criminal Investigation Division, my mother frowned slightly. So, paperwork? I almost laughed. Paperwork. If she only knew what kind. I learned how to read lives through numbers, to find truth where people buried it, to build cases that didn't rely on opinions, only facts. And here's the tension rising. The same skills they dismissed were about to dismantle everything they believed about me. Because of what my mom said, nothing doesn't build cases. Nothing doesn't win. And very soon, they were going to learn exactly what I had become. The first time my grandfather called me, not out of obligation, but intention, I almost didn't answer. I remember staring at the screen, his name glowing quietly, unfamiliar in its persistence. 3 times a week after that, always the same question. Peyton, how are you? What did you do today? Not what did you achieve, not what did you prove. Notice, here's the hook. He didn't ask me to be impressive, he asked me to be real, and no one had ever done that before. Today I noticed an inconsistency in one taxpayer's return. I told him once, pacing my small apartment floor. Numbers that don't match behavior. He chuckled softly. That's not just accounting, Peyton. That's people. That was the moment something shifted, because he saw me not as the quiet one, not as the overlooked one, but as someone who understood things others ignored. So I showed up, not loudly, not publicly, but consistently. While my parents drove past his street without stopping, I was the one tightening loose railings, replacing broken fixtures, sitting across from him as his hands trembled slightly around a teacup he pretended was steady. You don't have to do all this, he told me one evening. I know, I replied. That's why I did it. Here's what no one else knew. When the property taxes slipped past his memory, I paid them. When the roof began to fail, I handled it quietly. When the bills stacked higher than his pride would allow him to admit they were, I erased them. Not for recognition, for him. One winter night, the air sharp enough to sting, he studied me longer than usual. You're patient, he said. I had practice, I answered. His eyes softened. No, you chose it. That hit harder than anything my parents had ever said, because it meant I wasn't invisible. I was deliberate. The last time I saw him, he pressed a folded envelope into my hand. Don't open it yet, he said. Why? Because some truths land better when you're ready to hear them. I didn't argue. I never did with him. But here's the tension, the quiet warning beneath it all. He knew something was coming. And when the call came days later, when they told me he was gone, I realized that envelope wasn't just a letter. It was a line between the life I had endured and the truth I was about to reveal. Now let's get back to the court proceedings. And then the sound of lightning on the bag lying at my feet broke the silence in the courtroom. It shouldn't have been, but it was. Because everyone knew in that split second something irreversible had just begun. Here's the hook. This was no longer a family argument. This was a case. I placed the first folder on the table, clean, labeled, precise. My mother shifted in her seat. What is all this? She asked, her confidence thinning at the edges. Documentation, I replied. One word, controlled. Final. I opened the file and slid the first sheet toward the mediator. Letters, I said, written my grandfather Connor over the last 5 years. Mr. Clark adjusted his glasses and began to read. The room went quiet, dangerously quiet. His eyes moved line by line, then slower, then stopped. Paid the contractor today, Peyton insisted on reviewing all 3 estimates before approving the work, she read. My mother inhaled sharply. That doesn't prove anything. I didn't look at her. Next document. Bank statements. Highlighted transfers. Monthly. Consistent.
Those funds covered property taxes, utilities, and repairs, I said. All traceable. My father leaned forward. You're saying you paid for all of that? I'm not saying it, I replied calmly. I'm showing it. That was the difference they had never understood. Jasper scoffed, but it sounded forced now. Anyone could move money around. Correct, I cut in, finally meeting his eyes, which is why I included the receipts. I slid them forward. Dates matched, amounts aligned, signatures verified. No gaps, no assumptions. Only truth. The mediator's pen stopped moving entirely. He leaned back slightly, studying me now. Not as a daughter, not as an accusation, but as something else. Your profession? He asked quietly. IRS Criminal Investigation Division, I answered. And there it was, the shift. The moment the room recalibrated. Because suddenly nothing had a structure, a method, a history. My mother's voice came out smaller now. Connor wasn't well, he could have been confused. Mr. Clark turned a page slowly. Another letter. Same handwriting, same clarity. He opened the envelope and read what Grandpa had written. Peyton, you always noticed me and paid attention to me, unlike everyone else in the family. That was more than enough. That's why I decided to leave you the house after I die. Do you have medical documentation confirming Connor's cognitive decline? He asked my mother. Silence. My mother said nothing. Their attorney cleared his throat. We have one note. It's inconclusive. He nodded once, then closed the folder. The will stands. Just like that. No drama, no delay. But here's the moment that truly broke something. Not the ruling, the realization. My mother looked at me as if seeing me for the first time, and I realized this wasn't the end of the fight. It was the beginning of the truth they could no longer escape. The strangest part, the silence after winning. No applause, no victory speech. Just space. And here's the hook. Sometimes the real story doesn't begin when you win. It begins when no one can deny the truth anymore. 3 days later, there was a knock on the door. I opened it and froze. My mother stood there, holding a pair of worn gardening gloves, my father beside her, quieter than I'd ever seen him. Peyton, she began, her voice unsteady. We were wrong. Not defensive, not forced. Raw. I didn't answer right away, because forgiveness doesn't arrive with words, it tests them first. My father cleared his throat. We thought we knew who you were, he paused. We didn't. Behind them, the garden stretched, overgrown, neglected, just like everything we hadn't said for years. My mother lifted the glove slightly. Let us help. The roses, they shouldn't be left like this. A simple offer, but it carried everything. I stepped aside. All right, I said quietly. That was the beginning. And most importantly, no one forced them to do it. They decided on their own to lend me a helping hand, acknowledging their past mistakes. We worked in silence at first, pulling weeds, turning soil, rebuilding something that had been left to decay. Slowly, conversation followed action. Weeks later, Jasper showed up, awkward, hands in his pockets. Hey, you need help or what? I smirked faintly. Took you long enough. We talked that day, really talked, for the first time in years. No roles, no comparisons, just truth. The house I inherited wasn't the real legacy. It was what grew after: understanding, respect, a family rebuilt, not assumed. That evening, I sat on the porch as the wind moved softly through the garden. For the first time in my life, they didn't see me as nothing. They saw me. And maybe the real question is this: how many people are still waiting to be seen?
Friends, what do you think of this story? Write your opinion in the comments. Would you like more stories? Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell button so you don't miss any videos. See you tomorrow.